Dear viewers, welcome to the France 24 interview. Today, my guest is Ayad Allawi, the former Prime Minister of Iraq. Welcome, sir.
Hello, and thank you for the invitation.
Welcome. What is your opinion of the French President's visit to Baghdad?
To be perfectly honest with you, we feel that the French foreign policy is one which is proactive and it's very positive. France is well versed in the issues of the region, and that is why personally I called on the French president. I believe it was on the 5th of August. I called on him and I asked him to come and visit the other countries in the region following his visit to Lebanon, because it is so important to understand the greater Middle East area with all of the countries, not just Lebanon, but there's Syria and Iraq, and these countries were all calling on France to visit. And we have great faith in France's experience in the region and also in the French president, because the French president is one who acts quite wisely and has great understanding of all of the issues in our area. And that is why we feel that the French president's visit to Lebanon, meeting with Lebanese leaders, was such a success. I also hope that his visit in Baghdad will be a success. Unfortunately, I won't be able to attend because I will have to undergo surgery on my eye. But nevertheless, I feel that there is much expectation in the French president's visit. We are all quite interested to hear what he has to say, and I think this goes for everyone, all of the Arab and Kurdish people in Iraq. France's message is an important one. It is one of moderation. It's also a message that says that Iraq needs a nation-state. It needs to rebuild itself as a state. It needs to move beyond the faith-based system. And this is so important for our country. It's a message that needs to be heard. Our region is in an explosive situation. There are so many issues.
Problems in the region? Yeah, go ahead.
What I heard about in terms of Macron's visit to Lebanon is that it was a success, and I hope it will be a success in Iraq as well.
What is your assessment of the al-Kadhimi government's operations a few months after them being elected? Do you think that the government is up to taking on all the different problems?
I will be honest with you, as I always am. The current government, the Mustafa al-Kadhimi government, is the victim of a political system and situation in Iraq. There are problems of marginalization, foreign intervention, which makes everything very challenging. And I don't think that my brother, Mustafa al-Kadhimi, will be able to succeed, just as his predecessor, Adel Abdelmadi, also failed. There are undercurrents that go against each other. There is foreign intervention from countries that also don't see eye to eye, but that has impact on what is happening domestically, which makes the current situation, the current political environment, very challenging for anyone to succeed. So the current government is going to have to maneuver within that system to try and come to a positive outcome for Iraq. This is why I feel that the French president's visit is so important. The initiative on behalf of France in Lebanon and in Iraq are both very worthy initiatives. And I think the Arab countries need to be quite appreciative of that, because it comes at a timely point in our history and it is so useful for us. As you know, there are many similarities between what is happening in Lebanon and in Iraq.
Yes, but I think the case of Iraq is very different from Lebanon. There are so many murders, there are people who seem to disappear, hundreds of people have disappeared. So why is this not actually highlighted and spoken about in Iraq?
I feel that there is a general fear as to the outcome of all of this. This is very much what the former Prime Minister, Abdelmadi, and the current government are going through. For me, the solution is the setting up of an international special crimes tribunal for Iraq, a tribunal that will bring to justice all of those criminals who committed crimes against the people of Iraq and the leaders of those crimes. And this is why we've seen so many protests. But despite that, people are still being murdered, people are still being kidnapped. And all of that is due to the prevailing political climate in Iraq. Iraq is a little different to Lebanon. It is larger, and it has two large Muslim states as neighbors, Iran and Turkey.
So, Mr. Allawi, so according to you, the al-Kadhimi government is floundering, but he is trying to actually reconciliate two opposing parties, Riyadh and Tehran. Do you think he will actually manage to succeed to bring them close together politically?
I don't think that we can truly reconcile the positions of Tehran and Riyadh, and I don't think that should even be a priority. First, we need to deal with domestic issues. Those issues that are rife in Iraq, we need sound governance. That is why I don't think that we will be able to succeed in the current climate, because it is a very challenging climate. And also, I didn't say that the Prime Minister failed. I said that the political climate is the cause of any failings of Abdul-Mahdi and al-Kadhimi. The political climate, the political parties, the political practice in our country, in Iraq, have created a state where it is not inclusive, where the Iraqi people have great doubt and have little faith in their political leaders, and that's why there is so much unknown.
Mr. Allawi, where does Iran stand right now, according to you, particularly in the tripartite plan to launch the new Near East?
There is no new plan for the new Near East. In fact, it's an old plan. It's an old plan that seeks to improve coordination and cohesion between Arab states, especially in the fallout of the Kuwait War and the war that brought down Saddam Hussein. And all of this is so useful for the Arab states in the region, especially if they are followed by a number of meetings that seek to further improve the general climate between Arab states.
But do you feel that Tehran can accept that Iraq can become an ally in the Moscow-Tehran axis? Do you think it can become an opponent in the region?
That is why Iran is against any form of progress in Iraq. Iran is always putting obstacles in the way of Iraq. Iran is aiming to weaken the Iraqi state. The occupation has already weakened Iraq considerably, and the Turkish and Iranian interventions and interference further weaken Iraq, but also the whole region.
Dr. Allawi, do you feel that Iraq can now play a leading role in the region?
No, not in the current climate. Maybe later on. But Iraq needs to lick its wounds, need to deal with its domestic issues, because there are so many issues with the Christian, Sunni, Shia communities, between Shia communities, also with the Kurdish people. And national unity is lacking so drastically in Iraq, and this is a symptom of the political system, of the political climate. Iraq can't be a leader, and it's unfortunate.
What do you think of the U.S. withdrawal plan, which has been announced recently?
Well, they don't want to withdraw. They are just going to withdraw from a few key areas, but they're just going to be redeployed elsewhere. They're going to say in Ain al-Assad, in Kurdistan, the Americans are actually going to stay there. And American presence in their bases, it's not just there because of Iraq. They're staying there because the US is currently in conflict with the Chinese, with Russia, with Iran. And it is for that reason that the Americans aren't going to withdraw. They aren't going to pull out of Iraq. They're just going to redeploy their troops elsewhere. And a redeployment, that's not a withdrawal. Moreover, the US have actually declared that they're going to stay in a number of bases in Iraq. Simply, they have already spent a lot of money in building those bases, in kitting them out with all of the necessary equipment, so it's hard for them to withdraw. And actually, that is going to be an ongoing conflict point with Iran. And if the United States and Iran can't come to a means to improve relations between the two countries, then they're going to stay in the country. And Iraq can't be the middleman in this crisis. We can't play that role. In fact, that is why we are quite interested in what France, Germany, the United Kingdom, and Italy have to say on the matter, because they disagree with the United States.
Dr. Allawi, if we were to go back in time, go back in history to 2004, when you became the first Prime Minister of Iraq, would you ask the Americans to remain in Iraq as you did at the time?
That matter was dealt with within the Security Council back in the day. I communicated with the foreign affairs ministers of the permanent members of the Security Council. And we actually changed the name of the military forces. It was no longer an occupying force, but a multilateral force. Also, every December, Iraq has the right to decide whether the foreign military forces can stay in the country or not. I also, back in the day, changed the rules of engagement, which banned the United States from acting no matter where in Iraq, without the Iraqi government's approval.
Please go ahead.
I, along with King Abdullah al-Aziz, peace be upon him, also with Saud al-Faisal, peace be upon him, with King Abdullah II, as well as with the kings of Morocco and Bahrain, and the President of Pakistan, President Musharraf, we all agreed that we needed to replace those forces by military forces coming from Muslim countries that aren't neighboring countries with Iraq. But the United States said they would put their veto down should that be the case, if it wasn't a US-led force. And this is something that was touched upon at the Jeddah meetings. And many Muslim states said that they would send their armed forces to replace the US forces. But the Americans didn't want to hand over the power, because that would bring around a whole other range of issues. And that is why we weren't able to come to a conclusion. Now, I never actually said that I wanted the US forces to stay.
Dr. Ayad Allawi, former Prime Minister of Iraq, thank you very much. And I would also like to thank you, dear viewers, for listening. See you soon.